day 40 of our COVID quarantine. Well, it's day 40 of our COVID quarantine. Looks like they're planning on opening up the state the end of this month. Hopefully things will start to go back to normal, whatever that new normal is. But I think that a lot of things have changed and are going to change permanently. I think that there's a lot of things that my wife and I have discovered that are going to be a more permanent plan for our lives. We went grocery shopping, and we're trying to limit grocery shopping to once a month now, buying large quantities of items, repackaging them, freezing them, keeping them on hand so that we'll have a month's worth of groceries readily available. So our new normal for grocery shopping probably looks similar to this. We'll run to Sam's and buy a lot of the bulk items that we eat on a regular basis. We're not buying a lot of beans and rice. We're buying the things that we normally eat, normally feed our kids, normally enjoy. We're just buying larger quantities of them, and then we're using them that month. We're not keeping them for an extended period of time. Now we do have some long-term storage food for if there was an emergency situation and we couldn't get to the store, but generally, I think what we're trying to accomplish is making as few trips to the grocery store as possible. Not only does it save some money, surprisingly, it actually decreases our exposure to any kind of disease, whether it be the COVID-19 or flu or the cold that runs around. Decreasing exposure whenever possible, I think, is going to be the thing that we do from here on out on a more frequent, more regular basis. I don't think that people are going to continue to wear masks after all this is over. Americans tend to shy away from anything that's inconvenient, so I don't believe that that's going to be a normal thing. But it did occur to me that you look at places like China, and it's not uncommon for them to wear masks when there's sickness around. They are a densely populated country in areas, and it could be more susceptible to pass a cold or a flu from person to person when you're not as spread out. But you look at them, and everybody's got the same mask on. Everybody's got that little white or light blue mask, surgical mask that they wear around. But then I look at what's going on here in the States, and I see everybody with their custom created masks or construction masks or N95 masks or surgical masks or bandanas, and I just look at the diversity and the creativity of the American people, and that right there was encouraging. I don't know why, but just to see that it doesn't matter what we're going through, we're going to maintain our uniqueness as a people, our individuality. I think that that's a mark of what we as Americans hold dear, is our ability to make our own choices and to do the thing that inspire us, opposed to just what we're told to do. Sadly, I think that's also one of our downfalls. We have such an individual mindset. I am my own person, pick myself up by the bootstraps and make my own way in this world, that we seldom take the whole into consideration. That's somebody else's job usually, is to consider everybody else. I'm going to take care of me, and I'm going to make the decisions that's necessary for me and my family. But I think that going forward in this new normal that we're living in, we are going to have to take more consideration of those around us that might be more susceptible to disease and sickness. I hope that it would extend to other things like hunger and poverty and homelessness. But I don't know. But I do think as a people, as a nation, we have to start thinking of others greater than ourselves. There's been a lot of backlash, especially in our state, about how the governor has handled the situation. On the right hand, people are upset because he's, taken away our freedoms and removed our rights as people to congregate and gather together. He's, closed down private businesses and forced people into unemployment and forced business owners to close their doors in an unprecedented way. I mean, all the other states around us are doing it, and it's been kind of trickled down from a federal standpoint as recommendations, but it really is an unprecedented overreach of political power that we've been experiencing. But my question is why? Why did we get to this point? How did we get to this point? And the reason we got to this point, the reason we've progressed so far, is because either one, the government didn't trust its people to make the right choices, or two, the people didn't make the right choices and forced the government to take drastic measures and drastic steps to protect the people who they have charge over. I mean, they are responsible for the well-being and safety of our nation. Now, that doesn't mean, in my opinion, that they go and make laws that mandate that we do certain things. But it does mean that if there's an immediate threat, that they take the steps necessary to protect the general public from that immediate threat. You can go, one way or the other and say that, yeah, this wasn't an actual threat, or this was, manufactured to control the people, and I can't speak to that. I can't speak to how severe of an actual threat this was. I do know that based on the numbers that we've been given, it's a considerable threat. It's a considerable amount of risk involved. My own parents are in a very high risk category based on the information that we've been given, and if they were to contract it, it's very likely that they could not recover. So when I look at the situation like that, and I consider all those thousands of people that have contracted the disease, and all the hundreds of people right here in our state and our community that have actually died from the disease, that's a lot. And it takes pause to consideration of what is our personal responsibility in dealing with that. What is our personal responsibility in handling that? Is it right for us to go and to protest the fact that the governor has shut down businesses when businesses themselves should have been shutting down to begin with, based on the information that we've been given? It's a complicated, there's no cut and dry right or wrong answer, and anybody that thinks that they have the answer is fooling themselves. I would never be so arrogant to consider that I have more right answers than those around me. And it pains me to see that there are some people that are so upset and so irate with everything that's going on that they would be willing to sacrifice those who are vulnerable just to say that they have the right to. I wish that it didn't come to shutting down the state. I wish it didn't come to closing our church's doors. I wish it didn't come to businesses having to close down because of a government mandate. And it makes me wonder what life will be like from here on out. Generally, in a couple months after this is all over, I would assume that things would be back to normal with relatively few changes. But I also know that this event is going to be etched in the back of people's minds for years and years and years to come. And if there's any resemblance of an issue in the future where individual liberties and individual freedoms are going to be suspended for the health or well-being of the nation, I feel like bitterness and resentment and anger is going to well back up. And there's going to be a bigger issue at hand. And there's going to be people resorting to more violence and less of a tolerance for something like that. My prayer is that that will never happen. My prayer is that people will consider others above themselves. My prayer is that people will be prepared in the future and take this as an opportunity to look and say, hey, how could I have done this better? How could I have been in a better place and made sure that me and my family had what we need so that we wouldn't have to expose ourselves or risk exposing those who are weaker and more vulnerable just to get what we need. And if that was the case, then if all of Tennessee was prepared and all of Tennessee said, you know what, we have 3 months of an emergency fund in place. We have a couple months of food supplied in our house. We have toilet paper enough to last us a good little while. You know what, if there's a disease that's going around that puts people at risk, then you know what, I'm gonna stay home. I'm gonna make the choice to stay home. I'm gonna make the choice to keep my distance from others, loving them and caring for them in the best way that I can see fit. Well, then all of a sudden, the government doesn't have to shut anything down. The risk has eliminated itself just by the sheer fact that we took personal responsibility for others instead of just for ourselves. But Again, it's inconvenient, it's difficult, it's not easy to be prepared. It's not easy to save 3 months worth of expenses. It's not easy to go to the store once a month and buy enough food for your family. It's not an easy thing. But then again, neither is shutting down an entire state. So you got to figure out what's the worst of two evils. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen if we actually try to prepare for ourselves? You know, maybe we don't have a pandemic. Maybe I get sick. Maybe I get sick and am in the hospital, and my wife and kids have to fend for themselves for a month and a half. It's not going to be a problem. It's not going to be a problem because they have what they need. It's not going to be a problem because we've saved up enough to make sure that we can pay our bills if I'm not working. You know, what happens if somebody we know loses their home to a tornado or to a fire and they've lost everything? Well, now we have some to share. Now we have some to be a blessing. Yeah, there's an effort, there's a sacrifice that's required when it comes to being prepared and taking personal responsibility. But when it boils down to it, the sacrifice really is worth it. The sacrifice really is of more value than our right to do as we please, when we please, what we please. So what does the new normal look like? I don't know. I feel like give it a month or two and things will start to go back to normal. People will start to go back to work. Churches will start to open back up. Sports will come back on the television screen. Newscasters won't be in their living rooms or garages sharing the news with us. You know, I think that the normal things will start to go back to normal. We're not afraid, but we are taking the necessary actions and the necessary steps to keep ourselves, our family, those around us, keep them safe. And I think that that's going to be the new normal for us anyways. Limit exposure, be apart, connect with people in ways that we can be a blessing, but not rely on anyone else for our own safety, not rely on anybody else for our own securities, not rely on a grocery store to be there to provide us our next meal, but instead be prepared, be ready, to be ready for whatever it is that comes our way as best we can.